expert, right?
No, I did one the other day. Actually, I know what mine are. What we're not all supposed to know what our 4 letters are, though, are we? No.
What are what is?
Alice was referring to the Myers-Briggs study.
Oh, I think it's very good to know what your Myers-Briggs is. It's very helpful.
Yeah, I know mine. Yeah.
If someone hasn't taken the test, I recommend taking it just to see what it has to say for you. It's a very useful way of understanding personal preferences, to be more self-aware about what our own personal preferences are, as well as how to interact more effectively with other people based on their personal preferences. And that's all it is. It's not a magic anything. It's just understanding how different people work and how to interact with them, so that it's treating people the way they want to be treated, rather than, you know, the way we want to treat other people, which isn't always the way they want to be treated.
And it's probably gives you a general idea. I'd estimate that it's not necessarily a precise reading of your personality type, just based on, what is it, 100 questions, or?
It's not 100% of your personality type. It only measures 4 different attributes. Those are useful attributes, but they're not like 100% of someone's personality type. It was never intended to be fully comprehensive.
Yeah.
It's just supposed to be a useful tool, and it is a useful tool that gets poo-pooed by the psychology community because they weren't the ones that invented it. But, you know, it's a very useful tool, and industry recognizes that, which is why it's taught in most Fortune 500 companies.
Do you think it gives an accurate indication of the 4 categories just based on that limited? You do?
Yeah, because we should do another event. I know it does, because I've used it for over 2 decades, to understand how to interact with people more effectively. And it was taught in G's leadership, CIO training program that I went through, and we used it to great effect working with senior management. So it's really effective. We should have another event on Myers-Briggs, though. I don't want to digress on that tonight, because that's not the topic everyone came for. But we'd love to do social and kind of let everyone introduce themselves and sort of say a little bit about yourself, and what your maybe anything about yourself, or like yourself, where you're from, and ideally something that interests you in how to create healthy social circles.
All right, I'll kick it off. I'm DLJ, INTJ. Hi.
Cool. How are you, DLJ?
Radiant as ever. How are you, sir?
Excellent.
Well, my name's Will. I'm in the sunny coast of Australia, INFPA, IB for me. So that's INFP, whatever that means. I don't even know what it means, but I did the test 2 days ago. Pleased to meet you.
INFP alone isn't, like, you have to know where you sit in terms of the letters, like how far from the middle you are. It's a little more nuanced than just the letters. The letters aren't everything, but anyway, we'll talk about that at Myers-Briggs night.
Oh, it's like points along the spectrum, kind of. It's like you're either introverted, extroverted. Yeah.
It's a range, it's a range, and where you fall in that range is more what matters than exactly what letter you are.
I'm seeing some new names tonight. I see Arif and Ali Lau and Angelica, Araceli, Dane. If anyone would like to jump in and introduce themselves and talk about how they're feeling today, or if you have a healthy social circle, if you don't, what's good about it.
And just to put it out there, like there is a dearth of friendships in this country, and I'll talk about that, but it's not uncommon for someone to not have a healthy social circle. So like, no one should feel shy if that's the case. It's super common and not unusual at all. Jan, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Garrett. This is a really important subject to me. I wouldn't say I have an unhealthy social circle. I don't have much of a social circle at all. I have a lot of acquaintances, a very, very small number of friends who I can actually talk to in a deep way. And I have little patience with small talk. So, I accept the responsibility for that, but I'm just not interested in chit chat. Yeah. I'm lucky to have some longtime friends, but not enough. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen. And a lot of us are not interested in chit chat, so you're not alone. And you're in the right community here with the FTI, because most of us are attracted to this community because we're more interested in like deep conversations rather than on
deep conversations rather than on
Harry, there's an echo from your machine. So just so you know, like you may want to put in your earphones if you're gonna talk later, which we would love for you to do. So anyone else want to introduce themselves and say a little bit? Yeah, Farzan.
Hi, thank you, Garrett. My name is Farzan. I just moved to Baltimore, Maryland to start a new position in industry, and I'm very curious about all the nuances of how forming relationships and friends changes in the so-called real world as compared to academic environments, and structure, more socializing within structured institutions like that.
Is this your first time out of academia and going into industry then?
I did some startup-y kind of things with my father and some friends he made in Budapest. That's where I was for the past year. Yeah, this is new for me.
Cool. It's very different being out of school versus being in school. So it's school, we all naturally like have a big friend set in school that we meet with every day. So it's a lot easier than real life, quote unquote, although school is real life, but life outside of school is what I'll call it. So welcome, and hope you find some useful tidbits tonight. Who else wants to go?
Oh, yeah, here.
Yeah, go ahead, Arif. Is it Arif?
Arif, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so yeah, actually, I have run meetup programs over the number of, like perhaps 15 years time. Most of the time I had joined them, but a few times I have initiated myself. So in fact, just a few weeks ago, I closed off 3 of them, even though there were over 300 members. And something very strange happens, that they all sign up like, flies. And when the day comes to show up, and they have also a waiting line, like 6 would say that, yes, I'm, I'll be there at so-and-so time, and there'll be another 3 times as many who would be waiting in the waiting list. But out of those who had promised to show up, barely one would show up. And even the one who would show up, they would sort of present themselves in a very awkward, strange way. Like one of the person I had asked him to meet inside the coffee shop, and his message to me was, I'm here standing outside the coffee and I don't see you. I did not even get to ask him this question. What kind of question you have here? So to sort of, make it short, I have read about social connection epidemic for a number of years. I have maybe 200 articles on it on my radio, on my USB, and I still actively go to libraries, to lectures, to run into people who would, after the talk, want to talk a little more. But people just, immediately disappear, as if the whole idea was to get there, make sure I have spent this 1 hour here, and then get out. So that is, again, as Jan was earlier saying, that I really wanted to talk about issues that matter to me. We can all talk for the first few seconds about the weather and something, more sensational, but real connection, even at work, of course, work life is really not meant to create deep connection. So right. So this is what my situation is. I'm still looking actively, and I hope somebody, in my neighborhood possibly, but at least over the phone, you can create some sort of a sensible connection in areas that matter to, both sides.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, it's part of what we'll talk about. I think in the conversation, there's probably some things that I want to add to here, and that now that I'm thinking about it, we'll talk about a lot of that. I guess just having hosted a lot of meetups myself as well, I can say that usually I get 50% of the RSVPs showing up to meetups in person. I've had much less than that before, where I've had like 20 people RSVP and one person shows up, but that's usually very rare. What you can do to circumvent that is charge people. If they pay $10 or $15, and you can even say when you show up, you'll get your $10 or $15 back,
Right.
and give it back to them. But you have to pay $15 to reserve your spot. And most people will actually show up if they paid something. There is a lot of psychology around people don't value what they don't pay for.
Exactly.
And so, we do these events for free. I really want to keep them free, but people generally don't value as highly the things that they get for free as the things that they pay for. And unfortunately, that's psychology. I would love to find a way around that to get people to value the things that they don't pay for even more than the things that they do pay for, because the person giving it to them is doing it out of altruism and generosity, which means we should almost pay more attention to it than the people who are doing it because they're making money. But unfortunately, the psychology is the other way around these days. So, but welcome to the community. I would love for you to join Discord. I would love for everybody to join Discord, because we keep in touch throughout the week between these events in the online community, which is Discord, where we talk about meaningful subjects in text chat, and you can jump into voice chat if you're talking back and forth with someone, and you can do video chat and screen shares and stuff like that if you want to too. But that's an online community that we use for the Free Thinker Institute, just to kind of connect people. So Ellis will be posting links to the online community, and Ellis, remind me at the end to give a demo of Discord, because I think it's helpful to for people to see it and get a quick intro into it, because it's not as user-friendly for a newcomer if you haven't been introduced to it. If I introduce you to it, it'll be pretty straightforward once you use it, but it helps to be introduced to it. So I want to do that demo at the end. Although maybe I should do the demo now, because by the time 9 o'clock rolls around, I'm falling asleep. So, maybe we'll do that in the first 5 minutes starting at 7. Is there anyone else that wants to introduce themselves? Thanks, Arif. Was it Arif?
Arif, yeah, right.
Arif, okay. Thanks for your comments. Anyone else want to introduce themselves before we do a quick demo of Discord?
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Yes, I apologize for not having my picture. I didn't do hair and makeup today.
No worries.
So
hair.
I looked at
no makeup.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Read the description of your event and was intrigued. For me personally, the word friendship is one word that has many meanings. There are Facebook friends, there are deep soul connection friends. And so over the past, I've noticed that friends that I have been connected to, even since childhood, that I perceived to be in a certain connected way, were perhaps not. And for me, I began to think about, what is it that I want to gain from the connection with another person? How conscious of that am I? And more importantly, what does that friend perceive me as adding to their life? And are we truly in sync? Have we ever really discussed it? Even my closest and dearest friends, there are parts of me at times going, what do they really value about me? Why do they want to be in my presence? Why are they initiating contact, intimacy? And sometimes I say, well, based on the evidence that I've witnessed, here are my assumptions. but I don't have any direct evidence of them telling me unless I ask, or unless they volunteer a very specific outline of what they want from me, so to speak, what they want to give purely and authentically. And I think that has created some disconnect because of expectations and or lack of true understanding, which may not be either party's intention, but without true, authentic communication about what does this friendship mean? What will I like to give purely? Why do I want to give? What do I want to receive? And so on. I think that there may be some disappointments, to say the least, and definitely feelings of imbalance when there isn't a clear understanding from each other of what do they each want from each other. So that's been my experience.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I have felt the same way, and like I think that I'm going to address that in the presentation, but I think that discussing friendship is something that almost no one does and everybody would benefit from. So we're going to discuss it tonight, and we're going to have an event in New York City for anyone in New York City in the next week or two where we'll discuss it in person. Victoria, go ahead.
So I understand what the gentleman said. I find that when we get older, it's just so hard to make friends, you know?
Yeah.
I don't understand what the reason is, but I remember when I was a kid, it was so easy to make a friends, and even a teenager, even around college. And once you leave college and start to work, it's so hard. I have made friends through my profession because nurses are usually it's a close-knit group, you know, and we all have something in common as far as we understand what our work situation is like and so on. So it's been a little bit easier, but in general, it's just so difficult. And sometimes I feel that there is kind of fake friends, you know, like I just had surgery, and I was friends with someone and who lived right like on my block, like right across the street from me. And you know, she's kind of semi-retired and everything, and maybe I'm expecting too much, and please let me know if I am. You know, anyone can chime in. She didn't even once offer to say, well, can I help you with something? You know what I'm saying? I'm not that I needed it, but I was disappointed, you know.
Right.
Especially, I mean, I don't expect someone to come from Yonkers. Actually, a friend of mine, she's a coworker of mine, she lives in Yonkers, and she was willing to do that. But you know, my boyfriend was there with me. But this person that's like literally like 2 minutes away from me, and you know, didn't offer anything. So I don't know. I mean, please let me know if I'm making a big deal. I was just disappointed. And so my point is that it's very hard to distinguish who is a friend and who isn't, and who'll be there for you in a hard time or a good time. You know, it's very hard to distinguish, you know, between the two. And another thing is, I realized too that you know, when I was going through a really hard time, like, you know, my father had a heart attack, and I told her, this person across the street, oh, I can't go to lunch with you. My father just had a heart attack. I didn't hear from her at all. How is your dad doing? How is everything? Nothing, like nothing.
Right.
And my father almost died, you know, and
Sorry about
I mean, he's okay now. Thank you so much, Garrett. He's okay now. He's in a nursing home.
Good.
I didn't hear anything. Yeah. So I'm sorry. Monopolizing it. So that's
okay. I see a lot of hands up. I do want to give the presentation, and it's like 5 minutes after 7 where we normally start the presentation at 7. I still want to give a quick demo of Discord so that people can see it. I see a couple people I think joined. But to answer, to sort of respond to what you said, Victoria, because I think that's important to recognize what you said and respond to it. When someone doesn't offer you to help, there are two possibilities. One's that they just were never taught to be thoughtful and it never naturally occurred to them to be thoughtful. And the other is they don't have an interest in helping. And for me, I like to assume the best in someone. And, I have a, I guess like, I try to assume the best in someone, but I also like to explicitly find out which answer it is. And so two things that I'll say is, first of all, you said you were disappointed when she didn't offer to help. I want to give you one of my sayings, which is keep your hopes high and your disappointment low. It's the only way to go. And if you try to keep your hopes high and your disappointment low and don't be disappointed no matter what comes up, you'll be a happier person. The second thing is, if you want to know if someone's going to be there, if you need help, ask them. Say, if I needed an extra Tylenol and I don't have any in the house, would you mind if I came over? Like, would you mind if I asked if you had one? And see what they say, right? Most people, reasonable people, are going to go, of course, like I would be happy to have you do that. Like, come over and take a Tylenol. Like, what if I can help you, I will. And if they say no, then that's not the kind of friend you want, right? Like, most of us want friends that we can rely on in a time of need. And so, I think, asking whether or not you can ask them for help is a way of, doing what I forget the gentleman's name that was saying, terms of friendship are not explicitly discussed. They often aren't, but, I think it's worth asking, hey, would you mind if I asked you for help if I needed it someday? And see what they say. I think most people would say yes, quite frankly. And if they say no, then like I said, not a good friend and not someone you want to continue to build a relationship with, and you move on and you learned explicitly that they weren't interested in being a helpful friend. Does that make sense, Victoria?
Yes.
So I am a big fan of like explicitly dealing with stuff and talking about the things that people often don't talk about. Friendship is one of them. And guys, if you don't mind, you're welcome to keep your hands up, but if you don't mind, I'm going to give a quick demo of Discord, and then I'm going to go into the presentation, and then we'll have plenty of time for conversation. I only have like 10 or 15 slides. It's not a long presentation. There will be a lot of conversation. It's intended to have a lot of conversation, this topic, but I'm going to give a quick intro to Discord. So let me share my screen. So this is Discord. Over on the left, you have what are called servers. So this is my work server for Playrate. This is the Freethinker Institute server with this icon here. And then these are at the top, you have direct messages where people send you an individual message and they come above the servers. It's a little confusing if you don't know that's how it works. So that's why I'm explaining it. Is when someone sends you a direct message, this one's from Mahmood, who's one of my team members. And so the direct messages come right at the top, which is actually very convenient because those are usually what you want to respond to first. But in the server itself, you have all these channels and they all have a specific topic, and you can jump in and see what's being talked about. And if there's nothing recent, you can start a new conversation topic, or even if there is, you can start a new conversation topic on that topic. And so there's a lot of topic choices that you can discuss with people, and it's all text chat here. But then if you go to voice chat, like I just jumped into voice chat, then if someone else joins voice chat, we can talk by voice. So if you're chatting back and forth with someone, you can say, hey, let's jump into voice chat, and you can do that. And then if you want to leave voice chat, it's this little telephone with the X disconnect, and that's how you leave voice chat. So a lot of people get stuck in voice chat and don't know how to leave. It is a little confusing if you don't get taught. The other thing to let you know is there are a lot of channels in here. Each of these little hash marks is called a channel, or is called a, I think it is a channel. And so, but basically, if you click the name of, this is called a category, professional, then you'll only see channels with new information. So you can see I clicked here, I'm in the rules right now, and then general is bold, which means that there's new information there. So I'll click on general, and then I see that some people just joined. And then if I go to another channel, it's no longer bold because I already caught up. And so you can very quickly, even though there are a lot of channels, you can very quickly sort of just be exposed to the stuff that you care about and only see the new things. and not get overwhelmed with the large number of channels as long as you click on the category name. Does that make sense to everyone? Anyone have questions about that? You can just speak up if you have a question, since there are a lot of hands.
I have the basic question I have.
Yeah.
Is there a way to find out this particular service over the internet? Because I think I lost you on so many areas already.
Yeah, so when you say you lost me, you mean you weren't following what I said?
Well, about this particular platform, exactly
Right.
how it works, or so if I need to go on my own, isn't there a way on? Can I just
Yeah.
Google
Yeah,
this?
you can go on, if you go to freethinkerinstitute.org and you click on join Discord, it should say join Discord instead of join on Discord. You say join Discord, then you'll jump into Discord and you'll be introduced to the platform. You'll have to register and then you'll jump into the platform. And if you have questions, you can reach out to me offline, or you know, I bet Ellis would be willing to help you as well. And we can kind of get you acclimated to the community and how to interact there.
Hey, Garrett.
Yeah.
Just quick interlude. I apologize. I have to move on. Didn't want to just disappear. Very nice to connect with you, Gal, and I hope you have a lovely evening.
Thank you, you too.
Hi, could you show where voice chat is again? The
Yeah.
disorienting thing about Discord is that when you go on there, there is no sound. And if you're used to Zoom and you don't know where voice chat is, well, I've just left in the past because I'm used to Zoom and it's very different. It's just completely quiet and you don't quite know where to go.
Yeah, so people are usually not in the voice chat by default, but like if you're chatting back and forth with someone, then you can say, let's jump into voice chat, you know, and you'll say that in text, and then you go to voice chat here. There's a voice chat channel, and when you click on it, you automatically enter it. And then when you click this little phone with the X, then you disconnect from it.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And so you can have thousands of people in voice chat. So we're not going to run out of there's no limit to the number of people in voice chat. I think you can have like 25 people video chat at once. So it's very scalable. And Discord is a great, it's like a really cool tool. It's the most powerful, like, online community building tool that I know of. It's just not as user friendly if you don't get an intro. That's why I give an intro in these events, so that you guys can get familiar with it, because there are some really great conversations going on there, and there will be even better ones if you guys join. And the other thing I want to encourage people to do is look at the members group, the members document and someone asked, how do you join? I hope I answered that as far as go to freethinkerinstitute.org and click join. And by the way, guys, I don't always see what's in the text chat. I do try to pay attention to it, but I'm mostly focused on what people are saying. And so I can't multitask well enough to follow all the text chat in addition to the voice chat. So if you need my attention, just talk over me, or you know, jump in or raise your hand. I am going to wait to do hands until you know, let me pause the oh, I stopped the screen share. So let me go to the presentation. And here we go. Okay. So and I'm also forgetting our intro for the evening. So let me start with that, because it's nice to introduce the event and myself. So you know, welcome first of all, everyone, to tonight's Tuesday night weekly session for the Freethinker Institute. My name is Garrett Lang. I'm a software developer turned software inventor. That's why I didn't introduce myself when I jumped into the content. I blame that on starting in my career as a software developer, even though I haven't done that for about over 20 years, professionally anyway. I'm now an entrepreneur, and my hobby is writing and discussing practical philosophy. And I'm also the executive director of the Freethinker Institute, which is the organization that brings tonight's event to you. We're a not-for-profit looking to support and empower members. We want to help people be the best version of themselves, seek truth, and to be fair through transformative personal and professional development. These events are free every Tuesday evening. We cover a wide range of topics not typically covered in academia or industry. And we also have weekly members-only events. So a lot of you were talking about I would love to have more friends personally and increase your social circle as of friends. Highly encourage you to, look at the membership application and membership information that Ellis is posting in the chat, because that's really a key part of what being a member of the FTI is about, is creating a new friend circle of people who want to be the best version of themselves, seek truth, and be fair, which I would argue is the best type of friend. Because do you really want a friend that's going to tell you you're right when you're wrong, or do you want a friend who's going to steer you in the right direction when you're making a mistake and help your life be better because they point out your flaws and your mistakes? And there's a great Buddhist quote that I'm going to paraphrase it. It's that you should treat a trusted friend who points out your flaws as if they've revealed a cache of hidden treasure. And I really love that quote, because the people who help us improve and help us be better people are the ones that help us make our lives happier and make the lives of people around us happier. But because by being better people ourselves, we become happier and we help the people around us be happier. So we should really thank people who point out our flaws when they're accurate flaws, rather than get upset at them, and thank the people that even try, even if they're not accurate flaws, which we had another event on giving and receiving feedback last year. So I digressed a little bit, but I do want to say that we have only one rule in the FTI, and that is to be polite. There are really no other rules. If you're polite, you're good to go. But it is strictly enforced that we want people to be polite. That keeps us in the rational part of the brain, where we can think clearly and we don't get into emotional responses or get angry or frustrated. So we try to keep things, even though we talk about really contentious stuff, like we talk about some of the most contentious topics, we always have very calm, cool, collected conversations, because everybody follows that rule to be polite. So I think tonight's will probably be less contentious, but maybe it will be contentious. Who knows? So it's fine if it is, and we'll talk about people's perspectives and opinions after I get through the presentation. And so that said, tonight we're talking about a little bit of science and a little bit of art around social circles. I'm going to talk about some of the science around how many close friends are ideal, and actually there are concentric circles of friends which have been around since ancient Stoicism, but there's a modern version of it, which is what I'm going to show. I might pull up the Stoic circles, but it's a concept that's been around a long time, but has been modernized with modern science. And we're basically going to talk about how to create more people in those circles of friendship that help us live a healthier, happier life. So that's the agenda for this evening. We do have a large group, so I want to ask everyone to be respectful of everyone's time. And normally when someone raises their hand, we ask you to stick to one question or one comment. Each time you raise your hand, you can ask that question and comment, and then put your hand down and then raise it again immediately after, and go through all your questions and comments, but try to stick to one at a time, because we like to have a little bit of conversation about each one, and we want to stay focused on one thing at a time. And if someone says like 6 ideas, then we're going to lose track of the first 5 you said. And so it's much better to stick to one topic at a time. So that said, I'm going to go ahead and present, and hopefully you can see my screen. If you can't, then speak up, and I'm going to go into slideshow mode now. All right, so I'm going to, agenda-wise, loneliness is super common. Loneliness is worse than cigarette smoking. We're going to talk about the social circles that people naturally fall into and strategies for creating friendships. So those are the main agenda items. A little bit about the Freethinker Institute. We really want to create a warm, compassionate, open-minded community of polite people that embraces diverse ideas. And we want to create a world where So we want to create a world where everybody makes enough money that money no longer buys happiness, while still creating a meritocracy of wealth. And we want to enable transformational personal and/or professional development, ideally both, for members. And that's what membership is about, is enabling that transformational personal and/or professional growth. And then we really want to, spread happiness and help people be happier and minimize the amount of harm that happens in the world. So that's a bit about the FTI. So there's a TED Talk, which I don't think I linked to in the chat this time, but I did the last time we did a similar topic. I recommend going to YouTube and going to Shasta Nelson TED Talk after this event. She has a great talk where she basically talks about people feeling largely unknown, where people don't have someone to confide in. And she talks about how loneliness is an epidemic and the #1 health crisis for, according to many people. The problem of loneliness is getting bigger. Over 12% of people didn't have any close friends in I forget what year that was done. It was in the last like 3 years or so. Whereas in 1990, it was only 3% of people that didn't have any close friends. Only about half of people were completely or very satisfied with their number of friends. 14% of people frequently felt lonely in the last 3 months, and 38% felt lonely sometimes. Only 75% of people felt lonely, had 75% of people had best friends in 1990 and 59% do in 2021. So I think these modern numbers are 2021. And then, the number of people that had 10 plus friends was 33% in 1990 and down to 13% in 2021. 20% of Democrats and 10% of Republicans ended a friendship over politics. We live in a very politically divided world, and one of the goals, if I'll post my reasons for starting the FTI in the Discord community, because one of them is to unite Americans and really people around the globe, not just Americans, but also Americans, rather than allow politicians to divide us, because I would argue we all have much more in common than we have differing, even though we have different opinions over politics, and some of them may be irreconcilable, but I would argue as human beings, we have way more in common and way more common goals than we do have things that should divide us. But politicians love to divide us because it's a lot easier to rule a divided populace than it is to rule a population that actually has critical thinking skills, thinks for themselves, and cares about doing the right thing. It's straight out of Machiavelli's The Prince. If you divide the people that you're trying to rule over and get them to fight against each other, then it's much easier to rule them. And that's what modern politicians are typically doing. And that's why you see so much political division and why it's getting worse and worse, is because we as citizens aren't saying, you know, I'm not going to fall into that, right? I'm going to actually see what I have in common with people who have different opinions than me, rather than allow those things to divide us. So I really think that one of the things that makes the FTI special is that we talk about even very politically divisive issues with an open mind. We let Republicans and Democrats speak their mind, share their truths, and we listen with an open mind to the other side. And by doing that, we learn better truths ourselves by listening to people with different opinions. 22% of relationships, by the way, were ended over Trump. So he's the most politically divisive politician in modern history. So loneliness is more harmful. Loneliness is very harmful. It's equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day in terms of longevity. It's equivalent to being an alcoholic. It's more harmful than not exercising, and it's twice as harmful as obesity. So it is very harmful to be lonely. Like, it is a real problem. And friendship is very healthy. Strong social ties give people a 50% better chance of survival. The goal is you don't need a large number of close friends, but you do want a good social circle of close friends that you can rely on and have close relationships with. Like people were talking about earlier, this craving of having deep and meaningful relationships. Most of us have that. Like, not everybody, but most of us do. But not everybody has those relationships. And in fact, based on the statistics I'm showing, most people don't have those relationships. A very large number of people don't. And so how do we create those relationships? We're going to get into that a little bit later. The first, we're going to talk about what I'm going to say is there's like a funnel, right? Like, there's the beginning stages of creating those relationships, which we'll talk about tonight. And then there's like building those relationships and deepening them. which is more something that we talk about in the members section of the Freethinker Institute. So what I would encourage people to do is, look into that member section if you want to learn the how to build, how to build on the early stage or top of the funnel is what we call it in the marketing space, where basically you think of a funnel, right? You kind of narrow down the number of the amount of the quantity of something. Well, the number of people that might become close friends, you're going to start by, filling the top of the funnel, which is the largest number of people. And then you kind of narrow down the people you want to have a closer relationship, as I was talking to earlier. Papi está trabajando, princesa, lo siento. No puedo. Pregunta de mami. Sorry. Those with the most friends outlive the people with the fewest by 22%. 22% increase in longevity. I mean, that's like a drastic difference in how long you live. And I think there are good metrics around the quality of life that you live is also, very significantly influenced by the number of friends you have. So this is the modern version of the Stoic circle. I kind of want to pull up, let me see if I can find it real quick. So this is from ancient Stoicism, where you have the self, your family, your friends, your community, all humanity, and the earth at large. And this is from ancient Stoicism in Greece. And so it's a really cool, I think, good way of looking at our connection with the rest of everything else that exists on earth. In concentric circles where our obligations are the strongest to the self and then get a little weaker as you go further out, but we do have an obligation to every living being. And then the modern version just for humanity, because we're very human focused in the modern age. And so the self having like, close friends, you would have like 5 close friends, potentially 15 best friends, 50 good friends, 150 friends, 500 acquaintances, 1,500 known names, and 5,000 known faces. And so this is kind of what people are capable of, and it's sort of like not even what people are capable of doing, but it's like an ideal sort of level of number of people at each circle. And it's not a cold, hard, fast rule. Some people, like these are general guidelines. Extroverts might have higher numbers in these, circles, and introverts might have more people in the inner circles, but less people in the outer circles. And so there are differences. This is a general guideline, but it's something to use as a rule of thumb to sort of guide, like gauge yourself with, where you align to this. Now, Robin Dunbar is the person who came up with this, and he's basically dedicated his life to studying the right number of friendships. So you can Google Robin Dunbar. There's a lot of information on him. He's also studied primates as well as humans. And this like number of 150, I think it's the friends level. Yeah. That is equally valid in primates. Apes have the same, number of people in their social circle at that 150 level. And I think at some other levels as well. And so it's very interesting, the parallels between humanity and our near ancestors. So I talked about the problem, but I like to talk about the solution. Shasta has advice on what she calls frientimacy, which is where 2 people feel safe and that they're seen. And really, there are 3 attributes that contribute to creating a friendship, if you will. She calls it frientimacy. I think she's just trying to coin the term, but basically it's a friendship. And one, you need to be positive in the relationship, which means you need 5 positive experiences for every 1 negative experience. And by the way, I have 3 monitors, so if I'm staring off into space, that's what that is. So you want 5 positive experiences to 1 negative experience. If you have too much negativity in a relationship, it no longer feels comfortable. You no longer feel connected to that person, and it just feels like too much work and not worth it. And so you want to try to focus on positivity in your relationships, because you want to keep that 5 to 1 positive to negative ratio. We all want to be able to, like I said earlier, we want to be able to tell our friends, hey, look, this is something I think you did wrong, right? If someone, did something to you that you don't like, you need to be able to tell them that. but you also need to tell them 5 good things for every time that you tell them one of those bad things. And so it's really important to keep that in mind. If you're always giving your friends tough love and you're not giving them any positivity, they're probably not going to remain friends for that much longer. So the second thing is consistency. You need to spend regular time with people in order to build a relationship, and that is pretty straightforward. The third one, which is vulnerability, is you need to let yourself, this is actually one of the 5 intentions. In the Freethinker Institute, we have 5 intentions that are kind of the common values that hold the community together. The first one is to use reason and intuition to be the best version of ourselves, seek truth, and to be fair. The second is to transparently share who you are and what you believe, to the extent that you trust someone, which is about this vulnerability. And the second part of the second intention is to listen with an open mind when other people have advice for you that will help you be the best version of yourself, seek truth, and be fair. And so that vulnerability allows us to share who we authentically are with other people so that we can be heard and understood by people at a very deep level. But listening with an open mind helps other people correct our mistakes. When I share, my beliefs with someone else, if they say, hey, Garrett, I think you might be wrong about this, as long as I listen with an open mind and I'm seeking truth, if they're right that I actually happen to be wrong right now, then I'm going to change my opinion, right? And that's where vulnerability can help you get to know other people better, and where you can both help each other be the best version of yourselves, where you're transparently sharing your beliefs in a vulnerable way and allowing yourselves to be vulnerable with other people, but you're also listening with an open mind when maybe some of your beliefs are steering you in the wrong direction. And that's where, none of us live in a vacuum, right? We're social animals as human beings, and we need to listen to other people with an open mind. And we don't have to always go with the majority opinion. It's okay to have a different opinion if you feel really strongly that your belief is right. I would never tell anyone to go against their own judgment. All I would do is say, listen with an open mind to what other people say, and use your own judgment to decide what you think is best for yourself, and for the people that you can influence. So, we all want to feel loved, we all want to be known, and we all want to be able to share ourselves. Number 1 and number 2 are pretty straightforward. Vulnerability has a lot of complexity. How vulnerable should I be with someone? How vulnerable should I be? How quickly into knowing them? There are a lot of nuances. How do I know how much I should trust someone? All of these questions are things that we handle in the membership portion of the Freethinker Institute. And we have like a curriculum of, 5 or 6 classes that we go through. And one of them is about building deep and meaningful relationships, which really focuses on just vulnerability because it's the most complicated of these 3 and the most nuanced. And so, and that's redundant, but you get the idea. So that said, there is also something that the FBI uses in terms of relationship building. I just thought I'd put it in there because I learned about it in my research on relationship building. Is frequency, similar to Shasta, proximity, which being closer to someone. Like, you can build meaningful relationships online, but there's also a lot to be said for nonverbal communication, which you only get through, you get better in person than you do even over a Zoom session, but you get better in a Zoom session and a video chat than you do with a voice chat, and you get better in a voice chat because you hear tone of voice than you do in a text chat. I would argue text is the absolute worst way of communicating, because it's so prone to misunderstanding and miscommunication, and you don't hear someone's tone of voice to hear, there's so much that's said in tone of voice. And so it's really important that if you're having a conflict with someone, pick up the phone or go into voice chat if it's in the online community, because almost always, in my experience, if I'm having a disconnect with someone in text chat, if we go to voice chat, we almost always resolve it. I would say, I think I've always resolved it, if not almost always. And then intensity is the intensity of the experience, right? Like if you're, my wife is a physician and she's still really good friends with all the people she, did residency with, because that's a very intense experience to do a medical residency. And so, the more intense the common experience, the better friendships that are built from it. So now we're going to get into how do we build our social circles. And I'd argue I have like a 4-step process, which is the top of the funnel, meaning trying to create new meaningful new relationships with people and start to begin to build those relationships, not necessarily building the deep and meaningful relationships that the membership curriculum talks about, but this is the first steps that you want to take. One is attending events like tonight's session. You know, all of the people here are here probably because we want to make new friends. You know, I have a lot of good friends, but I always want to make more new friends. And I would argue I'm not probably the only one here that is in that situation. And so, you know, becoming a member of the FTI will help you build more friendships. We actually break up into pods of 10 or fewer people, and you get to know each other really well within your pod. And so that's part of how the FTI membership works. And you have common values with people, which are the 5 intentions. I mentioned the first 2. The third is to have, you know, hone your critical thinking skills, which I'd argue helps us all make better decisions, to know fact from fiction and wisdom from folly. And then the fourth is an eagerness to give, the fourth is a desire to increase happiness and decrease harm for yourself and the people you can influence. And the fifth is an eagerness to give and receive love. We all want to be loved, so why not give more love into the world? And so those are the 5 common values of people who are part of the FTI. And you'll be asked questions if you want to join as a member about those 5 intentions. Church and other hobbies are also great ways to meet people. I play tennis, so I've made friends playing tennis. I, you know, like going to wine tastings. I've made friends going to wine tastings. And so if you look at whatever hobbies you do and go for, you know, go to events, you know, meetups are a great way to meet people. Zooms are a great way to meet people. Anything that interests you, that you find satisfying, fun, and enjoying, go to those events. That's the first step, is to show up to the event. The second step, and I'm going to recommend a book here by Dale Carnegie. It's from, I think, the first half of the 20th century, but it's a great book on relationship building. So if you have not read How to Win Friends and Influence People, highly recommend it. If you want the Cliff Notes version, get a subscription, or you can get a free trial to Blinkist, and you can download the Cliff Notes version. The book is worth buying, though. It's not expensive because it's an old book, and it's totally worth, like, I've read over 750 summaries of Blinkist books. There are less than 10 books that I think are worth reading. This is one of them out of those 750. So I really would encourage people to read it. It'll help you build relationships with people at those events. And then when you meet someone at those events that you like, that you interact with, you know, say, hey, I really like, you know, give them a compliment. I really liked what you said at this time. And do you want to exchange contact info? And get a way to get hold of them after the event. Nothing wrong with that, right? And that way you're building, you know, a way to communicate with that person in the future. And I think a lot of people don't do that. They just, oh, I liked that person, but they have no way to get in touch with them again, unless they both happen to come to the same event again. But what are the chances of that? A lot of the times people aren't consistent at coming to the same event. And so maybe you'll never see that person again if you didn't exchange contact info. So would encourage exchanging contact info. And then, you know, if you meet a few times and you enjoy meeting with each other, like, set up a regular way to meet up. You know, I've met people in networking that I really had a good connection with, and now I meet with every 2 weeks, every month, and every 2 months, but different people at different frequencies. But I set up regular times to stay in touch with people, because that keeps it on the calendar. And, you know, I recommend, I live by my calendar. Like, I schedule everything with my calendar. It helps me use my time really efficiently, which is, you know, using your time efficiently is another lecture in the Freethinker Institute members group. Is I have a talk that I give on how to achieve your life's goals in a state of flow. And so that's another thing you'll learn if you do become a member, which right now is free of charge. There probably will be a fee for it at some point. Right now it's free of charge. So this is a good time to get in before there are fees. So the other thing that I would encourage is, when you're building relationships, listening is key. You really want to remember the old saying, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, which means you should listen twice as much as you talk. Totally true for relationships as well. One of the things that I learned from How to Win Friends and Influence People is, people love to talk about themselves. They do. Everybody loves to talk about themselves. And if you listen to people intently and ask them questions about themselves, they will love to talk about themselves. And when you do that, you're going to get to know that person better, and you'll get a sense of whether or not you want to continue to interact with them. And so that's a good thing. And if they're smart, they're going to ask you questions as well and get to know you better as well. But you know that the first thing you want to do is get to know other people. And if you listen with an intent to understand where someone else came from, even if they have a completely different opinion than you, what we do what we call this in the Free Thinker Institute is listening to understand. And when you're listening to understand why someone else came to the conclusion that they did. You don't jump into like why you disagree with them or why they're wrong or why you think they're wrong. You just want to dig deeply with empathy as to why they came to the conclusions that they did. And only once you've understood why they came to the conclusions that they did, should you consider politely saying, asking questions that might challenge their current assumptions. You want to tread lightly there, especially in the beginning of relationships. With a close friend, you can be a little bit more direct, but early on in a relationship, you want to tread lightly. So like I said before, for FTI members, we have more advanced relationship building techniques that we teach about. It's mostly about like who to trust, how much to trust them, how vulnerable to be, and how to build deeper relationships through that process of sort of gradually increasing the level of vulnerability you have and knowing that someone else is worthy of the trust that you're giving them. So the other thing I'm going to mention is this is often not discussed. What does being a friend mean to you? This was talked about in the social. And, what does it mean to you what is a good friend to you? Each one of you probably have a slightly different idea of what it means to be a good friend, but I bet there's also a lot of overlap between a lot of us. And I'm going to share just to, put some, to seed the conversation. I'm going to share some things that it means to me to be a good friend. This is one of those things that is often not discussed. For most of my life, I didn't discuss what it means to be a good friend. And it was only, in starting the FTI and like having some of these conversations that I started to get more into explicitly talking about friendship, that I even considered the idea had never even considered, I had never even considered the idea of explicitly talking about friendship earlier. And I don't know why. And I don't know why it's not talked about explicitly more. If anyone has an answer to that, I would love you to raise your hand, and we'll talk about that in the conversation. I'm gonna have to take a 2-minute break after I share my points of what it means to be a good friend to me. So for me, I want a friend that will ask me for help in a time of need, and also be there when I need help. I want someone that believes in seeking truth, that seeking truth is more important than saying things that will make people like you, because that's what I want to hear. Is I want to hear the truth, because those are the friends that are going to point out that you have, food stuck in your teeth, or, something like that. Those are the friends that are going to tell you the truth that might be a little embarrassing for you, but it's better that your friend tell you something embarrassing than that someone else find out about it before your friend let you know. And so those are the types of friends I try to surround myself with, and team members, quite frankly, in my professional work. I'm an entrepreneur now. So I also like talking about deep subjects, right? Openly and honestly, without judgment, and using critical thinking. Any initial thought is fine. And then we dive into understanding each other better. I usually like to do that over wine, or drinks at someone's house. Apartment life, I'm now in a house. So and then I want to know that someone will appreciate me, and that I'll appreciate them for their pursuit of the truth as well as the shared values. And so, I think understanding other people's values is helpful. And I have this is a spreadsheet which we use in the members portion of the Free Thinker Institute, where one of the things that we talk about eventually is common values. And then I like frequency, like to stay in touch with someone on a regular basis. And also, I also like friendships where I have some friends that I haven't talked with for a decade, but then we pick up right where we left off, which is also really nice. I like to keep in touch with people, ideally in person, otherwise by phone, otherwise by instant message, and otherwise by email. I like to have a purpose to everything I do, and to, often that purpose can just be pursuing knowledge and wisdom in general, but have some purpose or goal. It was mentioned earlier that someone doesn't like small talk. I'm also not a big fan of small talk. I do it because I've learned that it is important in a lot of social situations, but it's not fun for me. Like I do it, but it's not fun for me. And I don't hate it, but it's not where my heart lies. And then I also think it's important to discuss expectations of friends directly or explicitly. If someone is expecting something of me as a friend, I would want them to tell me. I would want them to say, hey, Garrett, like Victoria, said that she had her father was in the hospital and someone didn't comment. I would want someone, if I didn't comment, I want them to say, hey, Garrett, I said my father was in the hospital and you didn't make a comment. You didn't ask how I'm doing. You didn't say any of that. And maybe my answer is, oh my God, I had the worst week. And, the week you asked me that, like I had someone in the hospital in my family and I was so focused on myself that I didn't even think about you. And I'm sorry for that. And maybe that's what comes out of the conversation. Maybe they go, I didn't think I was supposed to do that. And then maybe they're not such a good friend, but maybe they had a reason, right? But you don't know if they had a reason unless you ask. And so I'm a big believer in assuming the best in other people until it's very clear, like that there is no good reason for someone to have for their behavior. And at that point, then I separate and I don't continue to build a relationship. And then boundarylessness. I love people who are ambitious. So I'm a dreamer. I call myself a realistic idealist. And I have an essay on why I'm a realistic idealist and why you should be one too. So I like people who think big, and I love collaborating with them to sort of make strides in the directions that we want to improve the world in. I love people who are knowledgeable in some field or subject, whatever it may be. I'm pretty diverse in my intellectual interests. And I like sharing thoughts in pursuit of knowledge and wisdom, learning together, people who are trustworthy, that I can share, things that are, important to me that I don't want shared with the broader community. That's part of what, for me, a friend does, is they'll, listen with an open mind, but not share things that are private with other people. I love people who are curious and people who will talk very openly to me if something bothers them, like I mentioned earlier. An example of that, not going to bother with that or that. And I'm not going to bother with that. That's like, I did a lecture on how science is actually compatible with spirituality and religion and what I call non-science, like inconsistent philosophies. Science is a consistent philosophy, but religion and spirituality can be inconsistent. And I would argue that you only get at the whole truth if you actually embrace both of those. Although when science has a good answer, I think that it's worth learning from science when it has a good, consistent answer. And with that said, that's kind of what I think it means to be a good friend. I have a summary slide. I'm going to share this deck. I'm not going to go through the summary slide here, but I really want to open it up to questions. And I need to take a 2-minute break. I apologize, but I'm going to let Ellis, do you mind calling on hands for 2 minutes while I take a quick break?
Yes, that's okay.
Great, thanks.
Hi, everyone. We're starting our conversation kind of discussion portion. I would say we've got a large group tonight, so maybe 3.5 minutes, a comment. I might interrupt if a person's going a lot over, but I'm pretty easygoing. And we have a new thing tonight. If you need to respond to someone right away, just add an emoji to your raised hand, and then we'll get to you, okay? So Arif, you wanted to get started?
Yes, I do. Well, again, as I said earlier, that I have read about this subject very seriously for a number of years, and I have in my Word document about certainly over 100 articles on it. So, and one thing that I came across, excuse me, with Garrett's talk, and I'm sorry, I hope I'm being compassionate, but at the same time, I would like to be as open as I can, because I think a true friendship can grow organically, in the sense that, of course, I have to go out, I have to talk, but after that, if it still does not develop, it simply means that you don't have a connection with the right person. Like the other day, when I went to, there was a talk in the library and I stayed until the very end. Hopefully people would want to talk a little bit more what this person has already said. And one person, he basically just said, okay, this is my email and this is my phone number. And I wanted that person to tell me that if that person wants me to talk, I want to know, why do you want me, to talk about, or so it's a connection which develops without having to expect that you have to be curious, you have to be compassionate, you have to be vulnerable, and all those kind of things. All those things are necessary, but they are not something that you can impose upon yourself, or you can remind even, for that matter. It's like, I did not bother to, call or respond to that person, simply because he did not even have the, basic, idea that if I want to have another person talk to me, I should give him some, sensible reason that, okay, we have been here talking, listening to this person, and there are these 3 points, and out of those 3 points, this is one I want to talk to you about. Then I would, if that point is relevant to me. So it's a, I think, again, as I said, it's a, I think Aristotle had also said that friendships are something as important, I'm sort of, again, paraphrasing his words, that without a friend, life is not worth living. And so, yes, and I truly believe today, I pretty much try to go out into my library, see if this person is reading the same newspaper that I read. I will have, some excuse to talk to him. Oh, did you get to read that particular article? And if that person gives me some idea that, looked at me and say that, yeah, he's an old man, and I'm in my, I don't know, I'm a millennial, but if this person is still interested, I still want to at least talk about this particular subject. I may have nothing else in common, but if this person is the only person who seems to be interested in one same thing, let's go to the next step. So that is how I look at it. I don't expect that a friendship should, again, those things like, curiosity. Of course, we are born curious. And if we end up later on incurious, I think that is where I want to tackle it. What happens, why we become so sort of, guarded, and even when we want to have more friends. So I'll stop it here, I guess. Thank you very much.
That sounds it sounds like you're putting in a lot of effort. So I hope that you find the right meetup and maybe a larger group to mingle with.
As I said, I have started on my own, and most recently I closed them off simply because these people, actually, one of the articles that I have read about friendship, the reason people do not connect, do not approach, do not come out, is because they feel ashamed of not having connection, as if everybody around them in the crowd, pointing at them, you are the lonely person, you are the friendless person, you are the person who doesn't like.
Totally.
Nobody likes you,
Yeah, no, RF, that's a great point. And that's why I said, and that's why I pointed out the statistics around the epidemic around loneliness, because we all have, almost everybody has fewer friendships than they would like, right? So there's nothing to be shy about. And I do want to make a comment about some of the comments that I read in the chat about, you must be kidding to have 15 best friends. I felt the same way, and I think it's really bad. They used bad language when they said best friends. Like, most of us think of one best friend. You only have one best friend because they're the best friend. What they mean is the best out of the 50 good friends. And so I think it's a poor use of language, but if you just think about it in terms of concentric circles, 5 very close people who are your loved ones, and then 15 people who are your, inner circle of friends. That's kind of what they're talking about. But thank you for your comments, Arif, and I hope you'll stay engaged in this community, and I think you'll find some friends here. Consider the membership piece. I didn't hear what you said in the beginning because I had to step away, and I apologize if I missed anything that you wanted me to respond to. Let me know. So
Yeah.
Osan, was there anything
No.
else that you wanted me to respond to, Arif?
Well, again, I started, I think, with that it's something that I have dived into big time. And the reason I go out and do all what you have said, and I have read, by the way, Dale Carnegie's book too, also. Again, he starts again, like there are tips, or these are, just steps that you take. I think we are born to be social. I'm sure when I was a toddler, I probably had, I just looked on my right side. If somebody's sitting by himself or herself, I would simply just, move in that direction, sit right next to that person and talk and all that. And usually if that person gives me the right vibes, I will continue. Otherwise, I would know it. I don't have to somebody tell me that if they don't show interest, if they don't show vulnerability, if they don't, all those things, they are so, I think, obvious things that, so I think deep down, the way I want to go about it, developing friendship, that are you friend with your own self first? Meaning that, do you take care of yourself, your food, your sleep, your time, you spend, your play, and mystery and awe and wonder in this life, if those things you are reasonably good at, and then you are. Pardon me? So it's it's that attitude I have to start.
Yeah,
on that.
I think I hear what you're saying, Arif, but I would argue that I'm fairly good friends with people that don't take very good care of themselves, but are extremely nice people, but they still make a good friend because they care more about other people than they do about themselves, and they often neglect themselves. And I, as a friend, try to help them to remember to take care of themselves. And so I hear what you're saying, but I would argue that someone can still be a good friend even if they're not good at taking care of themselves. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, to a certain degree. I'm not looking for a perfection in people.
Arif, maybe you can raise your hand again and then continue the discussion. We should go on to Osan. Thanks.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Osan.
Hi, thank you. So I have to mention that I'm in my 50s. So I think this question, depending if you're asking to someone who's 20, 30, 40. So the older you get, the experience is different. And okay, so I will make a couple of points from my experience. And I'm not generalizing this because each person has their own experience. For me, until my 40s, in my 20s, I had like several close friends. Then in 30s, it became less, and in 40s, even less. Then in my 40s, I realized that the issue for me is not being able to develop good relationships or friendships. It wasn't because there aren't good people around. The issue was like I was functioning the same way I functioned in my origin of family. So if my origin of family, if I had dysfunctional family, so I was like trained to be, let's say, I'm giving an example. If I had a parent who were neglecting me, or a narcissist, you know, someone, not in my case, or alcoholics. And so you take that baggage with you, and you take it to your workplace and to your friendship. And then I realized that the first thing I had to do was to work on myself and find out, what do I want, what do I don't want, and what kind of changes I should bring in my behavior. And I don't believe that you get older, you cannot change. I don't, because if that's the case, people are going to die miserable, because we all have issues in our life. We all have baggages. If we don't put effort to improve, at least, I'm not saying change 100%, improve 75%, you're going to be very miserable. So in my case, in my 40s, I discovered that because of my baggage, my family dynamic, I had a codependent behavior towards friendships. And so I had expectations, like, you know, I would give. And then if I didn't have half of what I gave, then I will say, oh, they're taking advantage. But I forgot that I was creating that situation. So this is number one. And I worked on it. I'm becoming better. So friendship is like, first look into yourself. What is causing, you know, that this is my case. Number two, I was in a family of 7 people. And until I was like 18, when I left home, I never felt that they were seeing me or understanding me. Right now, my family consists of 2 people, me and my husband. And I feel seen and heard. So to me, it doesn't mean that you're surrounded with 15 people. You can be surrounded with 15 people and you can feel lonely. With my husband, we are only 2, but I can feel that I'm being heard and listened. It both ways, definitely. I'm not talking in a selfish way. Being heard and seen is 2 ways. This is another point. And another thing about, someone mentioned about childhood friends. Yes, because when we are children, first of all, we don't know who we are. We don't know what we want. All we want is to play and go out, things like that. But we don't have the same values. Values are very, very important. To me, let's say I have a lot of interest and passion, but I'm realizing that, you know, to develop friendships, I cannot go out and find someone who's interested in art, in history, in museums, and in cooking. I can't. So for me, it starts from one thing, one basic thing, and which we all have it since we are born. It's our gut feelings, the energy. I feel the energy of the person, you know. And if the energy is there, we can go maybe further. If the energy, that's the first thing, you know, it's when you say the first impression is the energy of the person. Because, you know, it's impossible to find someone who doesn't have anger, jealousy, greed, ignorance, you know, and they haven't worked on themselves. So how can you connect with someone who hasn't worked on himself or herself, you know? That's why you're not feeling comfortable. So for me, it's very important to be in contact with someone who has worked on herself or himself, or he or she is naturally. Yeah.
I want to try to ask you to limit to that for
yes,
now.
I'm going to end it. I'm going to end it. If they haven't worked on themselves, at least they are naturally kind people and they come from healthy, functioning family. I'm ending here.
Yeah, don't worry. You had a lot of great stuff to say, and I wanted to respond to them, and I lost track of one. But as far as codependency, that's something that we talk about in the FTI member section. Is, you know, you have to find a balancing act between how much how much can and do other people want to give versus how much can and do you want to give. And you know, that's a balancing act, and it's not a trivial problem, as we used to say in computer science. It's not an easy problem. As far as your family being you and your husband, that's what was in the very inner circle that I forgot to cover, which is intimates. which is 1.5 is what they call it. I don't know why 1.5 instead of 1, but either way, that's the most inner circle. But I think it also helps to have other relationships other than just a significant other.
Yes,
You
yeah.
may have other common, beliefs. And you were talking about finding people interested in art, history, and museums. Well, why not go to a museum? And
Yeah.
if you're looking at the same piece of art as someone and you're both staring at it for 30 seconds, say, what do you get from this? What are you getting from this? Like what, and strike up a conversation. And if you have a good conversation, and I used to do this regularly in museums, but what I never did is like ask for someone's contact information. Even when I was single, like I just didn't do it.
But I do, I'm sorry, I do have a
Great.
walking friend. She's about my age. She's not the brightest person, but she's the kindest person on earth. So I love her energy. So I walk with her 3 times a week. I do have other types of,
Yeah,
so
I'm not criticizing
I take,
you.
yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
criticizing you. I'm just saying that if you want to find friends, you were saying that, how are you going to find someone interested in art, history, and museums? I was trying to give you an answer to that.
Yes.
Which is, if you go to an art museum and you go to history meetups, like I have a partner that does history meetups in New York City, and he does them on Zoom as well. So I can get you the meetup if you're interested. I should put him in the partners channel in Discord actually for a meetup. But go to those events and meet people at those events, and you'll make friends who have common interests in those areas. So I'm not saying you don't have friends. I'm sure you do have friends, but
no, sorry, Garrett, I didn't finish my sentence because of the time. That was my point. So now I'm trying to target the places as you are saying, and I'm finding buddies like, the walking buddy or the painting buddy. I am doing that now.
Great. And now I remember the first thing that you said, which is, oh shoot, no, now I lost it. So, but I also think that it's important that, what you said about wanting to connect with people who are working on themselves. Oh, and that was the first thing, was like, you were talking about how, we're never too late to learn. And I agree with that. Like, we have until the end of our lives to learn and to grow and develop. And I think it's really important. And that's why, the first intention of the Free Thinker Institute, which is the guiding star, is to be the best version of yourself, to seek truth, and to be fair. Learning, I think, is the meaning of life. I think that's the purpose that all of us have in life, is to learn, to learn both knowledge and wisdom and how to be better people. That's what we're here to learn. And so finding friends that share that common value and say, I want to be the best version of myself, if you want to be the best version of yourself, and we can help each other do that, that's a really nice thing. And I've been, lucky to find friends that are collaborating with me on doing that together. So that said, I want to let Kelly go, and then thank you for your comments, Osan.
Thank you.
Garrett, thank you so much for sharing the statistics. It was really alarming, data. So I didn't notice, feeling lonely affects your body that harmful, way. So, we are trying to be healthy, so many different ways, and we really take, very, priority to be healthy. Then we kind of neglected how, the friendship, how many friends, close friends you have, really affect, our health. So we have to be more, reflect ourselves, and it's gonna be really give us the, good opportunity to evaluate, my friendship. How am I, good friend to other people? Then how many friends we have? And the other thing is what I noticed in our culture. I'm saying, in America, we really call friend and very lightly and casually. The culture I came from, to be entitled to be called as a friend, we got to take a lot of effort and sharing the time, and we got to meet a lot of times. But here, only exchanging several text message or emails, people call casually, my friend. So sometimes I didn't like it, but making friends and being a friends shouldn't be that difficult at the same time. So, I kind of, neutral point. Then next point, why we are so difficult to make the friends as we, get older. Yeah, obviously, when we are so young, we are so open-minded. So we can be friends with anybody, depending on, difference of the social economic, status or, different values. But as we get older, we pick and choose. So, and we have to be comparability each other by social economic, station and personality comparability, and the similar values, principle, philosophy, all elements go into to develop the friendship. So friendship can be a really complicated thing, but as we heard the statistics, if it is really affect our health, we have to really cultivate, and we have to really resonate our lives, so to see we can become a really good friends. And first, someone mentioned we have to be a really good friend. We have to grow personally to be a good friends, to other, like even the family member and inner circles, our circles. And lastly, instead of making new friends, we have to really look back and what is who is our friends right now. So we have to contact them more, and we are trying to connect them more. So we got to see what's their needs. So making effort to make a new friends is very important, but at the same time, I think we have to put more effort to be more faithful and to be more kind and generous to our friends we already have. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. And yeah, the word friend is used differently by different cultures, but I would encourage you not to be dissuaded by the way that different people use the term friend. And that's why, even in this event, right, I said 15 best friends, and someone goes, what do you mean 15 best friends? Well, like, don't get caught up in the verbiage. Get more focused on, you want 5 people who are like your, potentially your nuclear family or really close friends. And then you want 15 people who are like, a slightly bigger circle than that, who you're in regular contact with. You share a lot of personal information, you have mutually beneficial interactions. And then you have 50 people where you're less frequently interacting, but you're still in touch with. Focus more on that. Now, those 50 people are called good friends, according to, Robin Dunbar's research. And the 150 people are called friends. Now, the 500 acquaintances are your Facebook friends, or for, I'm about at 500 Facebook friends. I don't friend people on Facebook very often, so I don't have a lot of Facebook friends, but the 1,500 known faces is probably closer to most people's Facebook friends, where you have 1,500. But I think great points, Kelly. I would just encourage you to not be dissuaded by different people's definition of what it means to be a friend. Just make what you consider to be a friend out of new people that you get to know. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Cool. So Angelica.
Hey, sorry, I wanted to talk about certain things, but I might have to go into a little. The one thing that I'm just right now, but I think about loneliness. I'd really like to talk about it, yeah.
You're breaking up.
I'm sorry, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to ask if you ever shared the link to the TED Talk video about loneliness in the epidemic.
I will share it in the chat. So the Shasta one.
I believe so.
Yeah, it's a great TED Talk. I highly recommend it. She gives a good personal story. She makes it, TED Talks are always really good. So I'll share it in the chat. And actually what I'm going to do is share it in the online.
Not so worried.
That's her. And I'm going to share it in the online community in Discord to try to encourage people to join in Discord. So I'll share it in the events section there. And with that, Victoria, you were next.
Yeah, so I find that I understand when you wrote when they said on the video or the thing you showed us, it said connecting on a regular basis. Sometimes, you know, I find it I know friendship takes an effort like any other relationship. But you know, if you're working full time and then you have a long commute and so on, I just find it as, you know, difficult. I think that's why one of the reasons why it's hard to be to make friends as an adult is for that reason. You have so many other responsibilities, and then on weekends you're doing your laundry and paying bills and whatnot, you know, even if you don't have kids and if even if you are a single person. So I find that time you know, constraints puts you know, problems on making friends and close connections. Another thing I find is difficult is money. Like I have a friend that she when she goes to a Broadway show, she'll only go to the front seat and pay $200, and then she'll complain that oh, so and so wants to sit in the back and pay $50. So that can be an issue also. You know, so you know, money and time, you know, it's an issue. Another issue is when you get older. I mean, Garrett, you're young still, but when you get older, a lot
How
of
old do
your
you think I am, Victoria?
are like 35.
Thank you. No, I'm 45.
Oh, you look like early 30s to
Yes, I
mid.
look younger than I am, but I'm 45. I'm past middle age now.
Yeah, but you're still young, you know. I'm older than you. I'm in my late 50s, and you
Catching
know,
up to you, Victoria. I'm catching up to you.
oh, and you know, when you get older, and most people probably here are younger than me on this thing, on this you know, thing. But anyway, your friends start to gradually pass away. I just had a friend this weekend that passed away, and she was 60. And so, you know, it becomes increasingly harder because you have less and less friends because, you know, they unfortunately they end up passing away, and then your family starts to pass away. So that whole thing about, oh, first is your nuclear family to be close to, that's hard because as you age, they start to pass away, you know. So yeah, so you know, trying to find ways to you know, connect in you know, with new people. Yeah, for that reason, for one of the reasons. Yeah, and that's it. Mhm.
Yeah, so Victoria, I hear you. And with all due respect, the things you're talking about are challenges. I'm going to go on video for this. The things you're talking about are real challenges, but I think that you shouldn't make them feel insurmountable. And I'm going to try to give you some examples of why I say that. Yes, it's hard to find time to make friends, but I would argue we all make time for the things that are important to us. And if you think about, and we this is again part of the membership of the FTI, is how do you find the time to do the things that are most important to you? You know, I work over 80 hours every week and have for the last 5 years, usually like often over 100 hours, but I'm still making new friends and I still find time to make new friends, even given that work schedule. And I have 2 young daughters that are 6. One of whom just came in, gave me puppy eyes, asking me to come play with her. So, you know, it's a matter of prioritizing, and you have to decide where you're going to spend your time. And we all, you know, should sleep for 8 hours a night. If you're not sleeping 8 hours a night and you're not a short sleeper, you should sleep 8 hours a night. And we all generally work 8 to 12 hours a day. But, you know, that leaves, you know, 4 to 8 hours a day of other time And laundry doesn't take that long, like dishes don't take that long at the end of the day in terms of the number of hours that you have to spend. And so spend some of those extra, often 8 hours a day to make new friendships. And then you have 16 hours on weekends. And so spend that time making new friendships. It's very doable. As far as the money making it difficult, some people are very status oriented, and they love their front row seats and they can afford that. But have an honest conversation with them and say, look, I get that you love front row seats, and I like you as a friend, and I appreciate you, and I want to enjoy the show with you. But unfortunately, I can't afford the front row seats that you want to go to. I'm happy to let you go to the show yourself. And, if that's really a firm thing that you want to be in the front row seats. But if you want me to come, I can only come if we can get more affordable seats. And if you have that conversation with them, then they can choose. And just don't, I would encourage you not to guilt them into choosing one thing or another. Just say, look, I have limitations because of my finances, and this is what I can do. And I'd like to spend the time with you, but I don't want you to feel pressured to do it. You do it, you tell me what's best for you. Right. And then let them choose. And, if you want to see the show, go see it with someone else that wants the $50 sheets. That's why you want a diverse set of friends, right? If you have 15, close friends, then you have other people you can go to that show with. Does that make sense, Victoria?
Yes.
Cool. So Oded. And Victoria J, I believe, was booted by one of the other admins. I tried to find him and I couldn't find him. So yeah, he was being
okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Oded.
Okay. I'm 80 years older than my picture.
Great, good for you.
Okay, but
That's
my
up to you
brain
too, Oded.
yeah, my brain is still the same as the picture, just my body. Okay, the point is, I came to this country from other country. So I left some of my friends. Being here, I have to work. If you're familiar with technical industry, you're working more than 40 hours a week. So I have some friends from my office. I have some friends from community. When getting old, many of your friends are just dying and they leave you alone. When you're getting old, you cannot get job. That means I was able to work till I was 76. And since then, I cannot get any job because of age discrimination. So I can kept alone with the virus. It makes me all lonely. So my friends now are the meetup people, like this group and other group. And I go to a completely different group because I don't want to be, as you said at the very beginning, single-sided. So I go to progressive and conservative, religious and anti-religious, just to be balanced. The issue is my age, you can get a real friend. You can get meetup people, but they're not real friends. You can ask them to give you money or give them money. Community, I was in Jewish communities that become too orthodox to my taste, so I cannot stay there. And my wife passed away, so what left is for me is just family. And my question to you is, does family consider to be your friend, or it's different kind of circle? And that's what I don't know. I have a lot of family friends, I call it, but they're basically committed relation as a family rather than created relation because of friendship. And so what is your answer?
So I'm not sure what, so you covered a couple of different topics, and so I'm going to answer some of them. But if I missed something, definitely let me know what I missed. As far as being a technologist and not being able to get a job again, reach out to me in Discord, Oded. If you're a technologist, I'm happy to chat about whether or not there's a collaborative way of working together. I'm a bootstrap startup, so I probably can't pay like a cash salary, but I can help you potentially, you know, find a way of, you know, using your technical skills if there's an interest there. As far as and ageism is a real thing. Like, it's very common in the industry, especially in technology. People usually err on the side of hiring younger people, and I've met so many people who are, you know, past middle age that have a strong sense that ageism is being counted against them. I guess I think it's great that, if I remember right, you were saying that you're interacting with a wide, diverse sort of group of social circles. And I think that's great in order to have like a healthy sort of mix of people that you're interacting with diverse opinions, because that's really where I think we find the most truth, is by seeing the truth from a lot of different perspectives. We can better hone in on what the actual truth is using our own critical thinking skills. It's only through that diversity that we can identify the actual truth. And did I miss anything that you wanted me to respond to, Oded?
Yeah. The question, for example, I have some technical idea like backup for your internet and computer on this stuff, and no one have a product like that. And I done the design basically, but I don't have the energy to make it a reality. And this is another thing, that at old age, you lose your technical motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Because of social, or is it just because of age? Before, I was getting cut many patents on different area. Today, I don't have the energy to proceed with that. And this, is it related to getting new friends that require energy? And I'm afraid it's the problem that at old age, you have less energy to acquire friends.
So maybe, Oded, but you also have to remember, acquiring more friends, if you don't have a good friend circle, will help you live a longer, happier life. So, you know, I tell my kids all the time, like, you know, you have to work hard for the things that you want, and the harder you work for them, the more likely they are to happen. And so if you enjoy being around people and you want to live a long, happy life, it is harder as you get older. Like, we generally have less energy as we get older. But you know, just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not worth fighting for, right? And in fact, I like to say the most valuable things in life are hard to achieve. They are worth fighting for, and we should work our butts off to make them happen. And that's because they're valuable and they're worth fighting for. But yeah, they're hard. And the most important things don't come easy. They just don't. And, you know, I think that's a part of, you know, our purpose on this earth being learning. And the more we put an effort in to learn and to grow, the more we reap the rewards of learning and growing. Does that make sense, Oded?
Yeah, see, when I was 45, I was able to do whatever I want technically. That means I have good idea, it was realized.
Right.
They have good idea and realize it is very difficult. They treat me as an old person. It's like a racist by the color. There's kind of token racism about age. And
yeah,
things that nobody usually perceives that mean, okay, the old people complain and in 10 years you don't see them anymore. And I still want to be like my grandpa that was more than 100 years. So I have so many years and there's no energy, there's no need for me kind of. And this makes me feel bad. Well, I don't know if I can get a new friends at this age.
You can. You just made one tonight. Meet, you know, come to the online community. Let's talk, Oded. Like, you can make friends in this community, and I would love for you to, to read the members Google Doc. Have you used Google Docs before? Did you see the link in there?
Not yet.
So Ellis, can you send Oded the Google Doc link?
Yes, I'm sending it.
Awesome, thanks. So she'll look in the chat, Oded, and Ellis will send you the Google Doc for membership, and we can help you make friends, my friend.
Okay, thank you, my friend.
My pleasure. So David, good to see you, my friend. So
wow, those numbers are intimidating, man. I realize
right?
how lacking I am.
You're one of my 150 friends, David.
150 friends, that's too many. I don't have that many friends, and then 15,000 acquaintances. That's
1,500.
I didn't realize I didn't realize I was so socially lacking.
Again, like introverts and extroverts are different. I think you're an introvert, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but
you're right. You're right. You
have,
see me so well.
We have smaller circles, but we have bigger inner circles, David, but we have smaller outer circles. That's okay. I technically test out as an extrovert, but my heart and roots are an introversion. So,
well, that's true of a lot of introverts. Just because you are sociable and all that, everyone thinks, oh, you must be an extrovert, but that's actually not sort of the definition of introvert extrovert. You and I probably both can be quite outgoing and babble away and be sociable and fun with people. But really, where we get our energy is being on our own, after having spent time with other people.
Yeah.
So anyway, that wasn't my main point. I was just just kind of adding a little levity. Numbers were intimidating.
Yeah. No, I get it.
My real point was, it's interesting the transition. Like, you go to, well, for instance, I'm in a boat club. And so there's a lot of guys there that I've known for years. But the transition from being a friendly acquaintance to a friend, that's quite a tricky transition. I think particularly maybe for men, I'm not sure if there's a difference, but it seems to me, men can easily sit in the sun and drink a beer with a bunch of people for 20 years, but that's it. There's no further, it's kind of a light friendship. It's not a close friendship.
Right.
And
that's
so
true, but Papi no puede, Papi tiene reunión. So that's true, but you can feel out whether or not any of the people in that, ask a deep question, right? Ask a deep question when you're, having
I do.
Okay.
I ask them, what's the meaning of life, guys? And they all laugh.
Yeah. And if they laugh and they think that's not a good question and they don't answer, then they're not your deep group of friends, right? You need to join the FTI membership and you'll find a deep group of friends. So,
yeah, but I think
not everybody is cut out for it. Look, I people that I'm very close to, I won't say names because I don't want to put people that I'm very close to under the gun, but people that I'm very close to, are I'm still very close to, but are not interested in that kind of deep conversation. And not everybody is. And it's okay. You can still have meaningful relationships with people without the depth. But I find the relationships I value the most are the ones that have a profound depth. And I crave that in relationships. And you do too, and they don't. They can skim the surface and be perfectly happy there. And maybe they do crave it, but they won't share it in front of their friends. And there might be a chance that if you talk with one of them one-on-one, hey, by the way, when I asked that question, what were your thoughts? Maybe then they'll open up. Just going to put that out there as try one-on-one, because guys have a tendency, right, when in a peer group, very few guys will step out against the peer group. If one person makes a laugh and jokes, then the others just follow suit. And that's a psychology thing. I don't think it's a guy thing, actually. It's there was a study done, a psychology study that I learned when I sat in on the Cornell Psych 101 class lecture as an alum. And what they did is they did a test of there were 7 people who were asked, are these lines all in a row? Are they all lined up? And the answer was yes, 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 for the first 6 and the 7th person. And then the truth is the lines were not all in a row. And the first 6 people were all part of the study that were lying. And the 7th person just lied, even though they knew the lines weren't all in a row. They were like, well, all 6 people before me said, yes, I'm not going to challenge them. And so once there's a status quo response, like people don't like to challenge that. Now, I happen to be one of those people that has no problem challenging the status quo. And I guess that you're the same, David, but not everybody is.
Oh,
like,
no, I'd
no?
goose step along with the other 5 or 6.
Okay, I challenge it. So, but not many people will challenge the status quo. So
Yeah, sorry, I know that the peer pressure is huge. The one thing, I liked what you presented, the FBI list. I thought that was short and sweet, and I thought it was really good because it highlighted the idea of proximity and frequency, and I think that's huge. Online, you really don't get the proximity angle, yes, I think that's what's so important is offline, sitting in a coffee shop or in a bar or in the park or whatever, face on face. Anyway, it's a good topic. It's a great topic. It's very timely because I think, well, I don't know about all the members of the group. Actually, it looks like quite a variety of age. But as you get older, like was pointed out before me, friends die, family die. People move away, that you were close to, and then they end up at the other side of the country. It's a tough one to replace, to keep the group at the same size kind of thing. And I think also when you get older, small talk for guys, and this is another thing that I think women are better at. They sort of can keep talking amongst small talk, because we all kind of we've already had jobs, we've had kids, whatever we've had. So we don't really have that, when you're young, everything's new and exciting. And, oh, did you try this and try that? When you get a little bit older, you've done all this stuff and the people that you're sitting with have done it. So what do you talk about,
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Thanks, David. We have a bunch of other hands up. So David Galloway.
Yeah, thanks. Real quick, I just want to say I really appreciated what Oded had to say. I worked at a nursing home for about 5 years, and I've seen a lot of, of the older generation, really struggle a lot with loneliness. And I really appreciate, people talking about this issue, bringing it up, bringing it to people's consciousness, because I think it's, it's a serious problem that, people really need to, work on a solution towards. What I'm struggling with, because I'm struggling with loneliness myself, actually, is right now, I've kind of been using these kind of online groups like Discord and Meetup to kind of meet people with similar interests. One of my interests, for example, is like creative writing, or I'm also interested in philosophy. And so a lot of the time when I join these groups, I feel like I don't really fit in. Or for example, like in the creative writers group, I've had a lot of people like being very critical of my writing, and it makes me feel like, what was supposed to be a social outlet, like it becomes like I always feel like I'm on guard in these places, or maybe I'm not good enough at a certain skill or not knowledgeable enough about a certain topic to like, be part of a group like that. And then, sometimes like it's hard to know, especially in a creative, kind of environment, it's hard to know sometimes when people are crossing the line and becoming toxic, you know what I'm saying? When they're, critiquing maybe something you've worked on, and, it's just kind of difficult. I'd love to hear your insights.
Yeah, thanks for those comments, David. And like I said, from the statistics, you're not the only one struggling with loneliness. This is an epidemic. It's super common. And I think it's great that you're reaching out to people online to find people that you can that have common interests as you. To answer your question as far as like feedback, for the creative writing, we had an event last year on giving and receiving feedback, and the Cliffs Notes version of the receiving feedback is always listen to them with an open mind and an eye towards being the best version of yourself, seeking truth and being fair. If they have a valid criticism, take it to heart and, make a change, right? And listen with an open mind that their feedback might be something that will help you grow and develop in your writing career. and try to assume that their intentions are good and that they want to help you, and they want to help you grow to be the great writer that, you know, like the amazing writer that you can be. You're probably already a great writer, but they want you to be amazing, right? Like astounding and, you know, bestseller book level writer. And think about it from that perspective. And if you listen to them with an open mind and you go, you know what, I just don't think that's useful feedback for me, then thank them for the feedback and just summarily ignore it. Because you ultimately have to trust your own judgment. And if you've listened to feedback with an open mind and an eye towards growth and development, and you think that the feedback's not there, not going to help you, they might be the toxic critic that is really trying to put someone down that's better than them, and they're really just trying to bring you down to another, you know, a lower level. And that happens too, and that's okay. You know, you don't have to get upset over that. You don't have to get angry over it. If you listen to them with an open mind, you either learn from it or you don't, and you should use your own judgment about what you can learn from, as long as you're approaching it from a place of wanting to grow yourself and trying to seek the truth as far as like whether or not their criticism is valid. You're going to be in a good spot after you approach it that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Jan.
Oh, did you say Jan?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. It's a great topic, Garrett. I have two thoughts. One is that I am a little bit bewildered by the constant assertion that you need frequency and geographic nearness to be a close friend. I don't think that's true. I think it helps to get started, but two of my closest friends live many states away from me. Now, we didn't start out living that far away, but if you have the ingredients for a close relationship, it doesn't need to end the friendship. I'm thinking of, you know, friends I've known for decades who live half a country from me. If we started like that, maybe not so easy, but I do have a friend, a woman who I met 2 or 3 years ago from a meetup that was on Zoom at the beginning of COVID. And we've gotten to be quite close friends. I haven't seen her, but we have Zooms about once a month. It's been going on for a couple of years. So I think maybe the proximity, the geographic proximity is kind of overrated.
Yeah, that was the FBI one, and I agree with you. I think it's a little overrated, but I will say that relationships that I've had in person deepen faster than the relationships that are only online. And there's something about being in person that helps you connect better with people, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't think it's in a, you know, like if you don't have it, there's no possibility of a deeper relationship. So I agree with you there.
That makes sense. My other point was that, and this may be more than what could be covered in one evening, but how to navigate conflicts in close relationships.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about it at all. Like what is a significant conflict? What can you overlook? I read something very interesting several months ago, an article in The Atlantic by a reporter, I think her name was Jennifer Senior. And if I recall, the title was Only Your Close Friends Can Break Your Heart. It was a long, really interesting article that I recommend looking up. And she talked about, well, she looked at many decades-long friendships. And the main takeaway for me, it was, I mean, it's kind of sad in a way, these two women friends who had both been depressed at different times in their lives for different reasons, and each had opinions on how the other one coped with her depression, and it ended the friendship. Now that could be an anomalous thing that almost never happens, but it's just an example of how friends can see things in, well, and related to this really is probably another topic, is how do you cope? How do you help your friend cope if you have a friend who has a really serious intractable problem? A friend of mine has chronic health problems that will probably, I hate to say it, never be resolved. She's lived with chronic pain for years. So if I don't sound concerned enough at the right moment, she doesn't feel cared enough about. And I don't think I'm doing so badly. So maybe that's another topic, but I think, like, what can you expect from close friends? That's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have time for it in the next 15 minutes with lots of hands up. but I would highly encourage you to like, look at potentially joining as a member of the FTI, because that is something that's covered in depth in the FTI curriculum. So, I would love your feedback on that if you do join and get accepted to the FTI.
Yeah, thanks, Garrett. That's a good idea.
No problem. We would love to have you. So Rachel, go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to bring up the idea. Oh, here, I'll turn my video on. I wanted to bring up the idea. It's already been touched on by many, because I think that the two ideas are closely linked, friendship and introversion versus extroversion. But there's a book that I've been reading that I actually spoke with Ellis about a little bit, called Quiet by Susan Cain. Yep. And it's basically a book written like in defense of the introvert and how our culture really like made this huge shift in, when was Dale Carnegie big? Was it like the 1930s or something, 40s?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's when this huge cultural shift happened, in large part because people were moving to cities. So like, anyway, she goes really deep into it, but I wanted to just be a voice for the introverts, because I identify definitely as an introvert, and say that like, maybe there are other mediums, maybe it doesn't always have to be in person. Like I also represent maybe a younger generation here, but I think that it's totally still valid if you find like deep connection through writing to people, or Zoom, like only Zoom calls. Like Jan just said, like my closest friends are actually across the country. So I don't know. I think it's just worth saying that it's fine if you don't necessarily have this like massive group of friends that you go out for drinks with every week, because like some people in the book, she brings up a study where this, I think his last name is Kagan, learned that by 4 months old, he could tell if someone was going to be introverted or extroverted. And the way he could do that is the babies that were more reactive to external stimuli ended up being introverts, because like, anyway, maybe that like makes sense. I don't have to explain it further, but yeah, I find that very interesting. And here's me saying like introverts still deserve and can find deep connection with others, and it doesn't always have to look like a certain way just because a study says that it might have to look like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any study that says extroversion is the right way to be. Like there is no, and Myers-Briggs would never say that either. There's value in introversion and extroversion, and they're just different preferences, and there's no right or wrong. And I don't think Dale Carnegie's book says everyone should be an extrovert either. I was an extreme introvert when I read that book. It helped me to build more relationships with more people, which did get me to gradually be, now I test out as an extrovert. But the book Quiet, I read a summary of on Blinkist, and it's one of the 750, over 750 books that I've read a summary of or listened to a summary of. And it's a great book, and it talks about how introverts process information much more thoroughly than extroverts. And that's part of why having a well-balanced team in industry and amongst friends is valuable, because different people will serve different roles, and that's good. It's good to have diversity. And you don't want to have only friends that are introverts. You don't want to have only friends that are extroverts. It's good to have a mix, because they bring different things into your life. And I agree with you that we can have friends from all around the world. I have friends from all around the world, and you said across the country, but it goes for all around the world, and that's great. Like that creates more diversity in our lives, and diverse opinions help expose us to ideas that we wouldn't otherwise be exposed to, which helps us seek truth more effectively than if we're only exposed to a narrow view of the world. And so, everything you said made sense to me. All I would say is it sounded like you were implying that How to Win Friends and Influence People wanted everyone to be an extrovert. It doesn't want that. It's just explaining how to build relationships for anyone. Introverts actually, like I said, have bigger, smaller circles of close friends than extroverts do. Extroverts often don't have those really close friends because they don't dig below the surface. And so they don't have the really, the close friends or the best friends. They don't have as much of a circle in that area because they usually skim the surface. But yeah, does that make sense, Rachel?
Yeah, yeah. And just for clarification, like it probably did come across as that. I didn't mean it as a dig on like Dale Carnegie or that book.
Yeah.
I've also read it and I really enjoyed it, but I just meant the author associates Dale Carnegie with the movement of like our culture's desire to all be extroverted, where that's not really like what comes most naturally to all of us.
Yeah. And I really like the book, but I wouldn't make the association of Dale Carnegie implying that everyone should be an extrovert. I think he was just teaching relationship building skills for anyone, introverts and extroverts. You know, I was an extreme introvert when I read that book, and I found it really valuable to learn how to relate better to other people. So, and I still use a lot of the things that I read from that book today. And when I reread it on Blinkist, I got more out of it. So that said, I want to let Katie go.
Yeah, I've been enjoying people's comments. I'm hearing different things like coming out of school age, you know, do you have to like seek out these communities and stuff like that. I think for the biggest thing for me is also making sure that I always have a backup plan as things change, like looking forward into the future instead, you know, like, so I find something that's functioning, I'm like, great, I'm happy. And then also be kind of thinking about my backup plan, you know, just in case as things change or schedules change. Quiet, the book Quiet. And I think also I had one of the
Katie, I wasn't telling you to be quiet.
An organizer of a social club in San Francisco said too, it helped me so much because he gave the suggestion to the group to make sure to tell people to like be looking for communities rather than just kind of hitting up so many different one-off nights things. And that really helped me with feeling more stable emotionally, because I felt so rocked when I would go to like this over here and this over here and this over here, because I felt I did a little bit better in communities.
Great. Well, we're happy to have you part of our community because you're a regular, and we're really happy to have you because you always have good comments, and so thank you for that. So I want to let Farzan, if you don't mind, I'm going to let Shaunak and Mark go because they haven't spoken yet. Is that all right? Cool. So Shaunak, go ahead.
Hi, Garrett. A lot of great points today. Really like hearing, you know, the different cultural perspective and the age perspectives as well. You know, they're really nice. Just wanted to point out too, I don't think it's also for a dearth of trying that people aren't trying, or everybody here is, you know, here because they are wanting to try, right? The only reason I personally feel that, you know, we still have difficulty is we try or we make a friend, but it's not the same level of friendship, maybe something that you had with a friend you haven't you made in past or in school, like from middle school or something like that. So for example, I mean, I have a friend who lives in Germany now, and I talk to him, and it's more like the friendship is more like it's like an insult friendship. Like we make jokes on behalf of each other. Like I try to insult him, he tries to insult me, and the point is, you know, who can make the other person laugh the most. And if we agree, like, okay, that was a good one. So it's something like, you know, you want a deep friendship on that level. And now I'm not saying that we don't really have that many interests in common. Like I have, and I like to go into deeper things, like into philosophy and like many other people here, but he's not necessarily looking into that. And I'm feeling that, you know, it's something as deep as that many people are wanting. But the space issue is one thing, and it's just like to recreate that as you grow older becomes more and more difficult. The points you made about having proximity and having frequency, I believe they're extremely important. That's why I think, you know, it's much more easier to make friends in school than at work or anywhere else. It's I sometimes think it's not even necessary to have common interests. I believe many people will have friends who they don't have common interests with, but just by the fact that they grew up with in their past, I would say that they feel very close to that person, or they can joke with that person. It's just extremely difficult to recreate that given the time constraints and whatever we have as we grow older. I'm specifically pointing to that, that intensity of friendship that you can have. I won't say that, my other friend, he's, I think, a bit more extroverted than I am, and he has friend groups. He has shallow friends there. I personally do not. And I'm to some degree okay with that as well. But it does not mean that, there's that sense of one thing that has gone away from my end. And I'm feeling that that is something similar that many people here look for as well.
Yeah, I do think a lot of people here in this, the FTI sort of, we intentionally choose deep topics to talk about because that's, the kind of community that we're trying to create is people that are interested in being the best version of themselves, seeking truth and being fair, which are sort of deep pursuits, right? They're not shallow pursuits. And I agree with you. I don't think it's a lack of trying or wanting to have friends that's holding people back. I think it's a lack of knowing the techniques to create deep and meaningful friendships. And that's why I held tonight's event and did research on, making friends and, what kind of friend circles, are ideal, so that we would have a sense of like grounding ourselves in some of the research, and also some of it's my own addition. So, you can take that for what you will and find it useful or not. I would love the feedback if you, use the techniques I was talking about building friendships. As far as the relationships, you said that you don't think that people necessarily need to have common interests. I can't think of any really long-term friends that I don't have common interests with. If I don't have common interests with someone, I don't continue to maintain the relationship, and so I don't know, Shaunak, if you have people that you've been friends with for really long periods of time. When I think about the long-term friendships, we always have common values or common interests.
Some interest, but maybe not to the same degree. That's what I'm pointing at. Like I go much deeper, and I'm pretty sure you also go much deeper, but it's difficult for you to find somebody at that same intensity, right? The intensity is the point that I'm referring to, and that's okay. That's okay. I'm not saying everybody has to, if somebody is as intense as you are, you kind of get tired of that other person as well. I would assume it's but you can come back again, but for example, I know this for a fact that my friend, he will push me because he knows I'm in a certain way, and it's lovable in a certain way, like he pushes me. I like that, but I know he's like, I love the fact that he can at least make fun of me. And I allow that to a certain degree.
It's funny. A lot of guys like those kinds of relationships. That's not what I look for, right? That's not what I find fun. So different things for different people. I would argue that any relationship is fine as long as it's mutually agreeable, and as long as you're both enjoying it, cool. Like that's great.
Yeah, playful digs, as I think Katie pointed out.
No, a lot of people like that, and cool, like enjoy it. It's just that's not how I try to spend my time, but like, if you enjoy it, like keep enjoying it, and then let's let Mark go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
So hello everyone. I think I might be asking questions more than I may be making comments, but
great.
But I want to contextualize what I'm
going
to say. So I guess in context, I'm looking at all of these people who arrived in this group, and I would say that this group selects for people who are open, who are searching, right, who are looking. And so I also think that this meetup itself is a glimmer of hope. But in context, I think I was late, so I don't know what was said, but I think we're living in a really weird time. Like, we have no communities of faith left, right? Like, this is a group of people coming together to talk about a need for togetherness, and I see societies being really demoralized, right? Like, there's a lot of division in society right now. And I actually think we're kind of in a tough spot that way. And I see our families have failed, right? 50% of marriages end. And I really think our society is sick, as indicated by the birth rates. The birth rates are not replacement. And any organism that doesn't replace itself is dying, right? And I'm not trying to be a big bummer, but I guess I would like to see some discussion around that, and only if it's useful to help people orientate themselves in context, because I think a lot of people are struggling within these sort of realities, right? And I think language is a big one for people, and I think this community might be an opportunity to develop some real powerful language tools. Like, I deal with people, and we always talk about values, but I think people often mistake value for ideal. And what I mean there is that I often will meet people. I often end up in these kinds of discussions about what we think is good in the world and what's right and what's good for people. But people will talk about their ideals. And what people don't often, I think, identify is that values are decisions. When people make a decision and a choice and an action, that's your value. That's when you assign value. Values are very practical, real, absolute phenomena in someone's life. It's when they make decisions, they assign value. And you'll meet people and they'll talk about their value, but really they're talking about their ideals. Their life may not have anything to do with these expressed ideals. And I think understanding that difference could be useful. And in terms of language, in terms of around friends, like friends and acquaintances, and I don't know, I see value in kind of developing some language around that. It's Orwellian, right? If we don't have words for something, we can't manipulate those ideas in our heads.
Language around what? I'm sorry.
Well, like levels of friendship, right? Like, for example, if you're talking about a business and you're talking about its viability, you may talk about its level of readiness, right? And that within the startup community, just speaking to your sort of entrepreneurial interests, people have language around whether business is ready to go or not in terms of its readiness level, right? Or its ladder. Is it TRI? What's the term that's used amongst entrepreneurial groups? Anyway, it's technical readiness level. I think there's some merit in thinking about that in terms of, say, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or for individuals. I don't know. I feel like, I think it's just I don't know. I think people at different levels, say, for example, at different levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they're going to show up to an interaction and they're have a certain need, right? I mean, speaking for myself, I'm kind of terrible when it comes to people. When I meet somebody and they're sort of fishing for an endorsement, I have a lot of trouble giving that to a person. And maybe it's because I'm selfish. Maybe because I think, hey, I don't know this person enough. They're fishing for an endorsement. I don't want to, why should I give this person an endorsement? What they're going to give me back, And so, anyway, I think that if we had language that could assign where you perceive people are at, or I don't know, I just feel like we're all sort of fumbling here. We're talking friends and our needs, and if we had language to flesh out where we're at. And I know that some of the popularized psychological language, like, Jordan Peterson's very popular now. And I'm not saying I endorse or not endorse his work, but just some of the language that he uses, where he talks about the big five, the character traits, personality traits and stuff. If we use those in common parlance, it would help. Anyway, I just thought I would inject that into the conversation. I'm curious to hear what else everybody else has to say.
Sure, I'm going to try to comment. We kind of have to close out. I'm going to let Barzan go after I comment, but then we're going to close out. I'm going to stop taking hands because we're already a little after 9, and it's been a long day. So, but as far as, I took a lot of notes. So, yes, I do think we try to select for an open group of people that are searching and looking. I really appreciate your saying that this meetup is a glimmer of hope. That's what I'm trying to create with the FTI, is a glimmer of hope for a better future where we can be more united in common values rather than divided the way that politicians like to divide us. As far as not having communities of faith left, there are many communities of faith, in my opinion. There are lots of churches and they have their communities, but not everybody identifies with all of the beliefs that they have to believe in order to join those faith-based communities. And in order to join them, you have to agree with almost all of what they say, if not all of what they say. And if you don't, then you don't feel welcome in that community. We're trying to create a community where if you agree with the 5 intentions, which are, I think, things that any reasonable person would agree to, that just makes sense and will help someone live a better life, then you're a part of the community and you have common values with other people. And they're not just platitudes, right? Like being the best version of yourself, seeking truth and being fair is like a real tangible thing. Having an open mind is a real tangible thing. These are not like just words on paper. They're actions that people take, to your point, and they need to be actions. I would just say, I think that we're going to have a conversation coming up about birth rates being non-replacement. So there will be a conversation on the philosophy of antinatalism, which is saying that we should not have kids. We're going to have a speaker that's more pro-natalism, that we should be having more kids. The only reason that the US population is growing is actually because of immigration, because otherwise we would be a shrinking population that doesn't have enough employees to fill the jobs that employers want, which we talked about immigration last week, where we learned that. And then I agree with you on language. I think we need to have better language around these concentric circles of friendship. And I added a little bit of language on that slide, which I didn't go over very well, but it was on the slide. And that was even more language than, the articles that I read about those concentric circles, which was not a lot of language. And I really appreciate your point that if you don't have language about it, it doesn't become tangible. And so I would love to, have you join the online community and talk more offline, because we're kind of at the end of tonight, about language around those concentric circles and what kind of relationships, like let's define the types of relationships that we would want for 15 relationships or for 50 relationships, and what do those relationships look like. Let's create language around it, because I don't think it exists. I think they've studied it to some degree, or if it exists, it probably does, because he's a researcher. I'm sure he's got lots of stuff about it, but I didn't see it in my research for tonight's presentation, and maybe we can find it together, or ChatGPT has it. So great points. Values is something that we get into in the membership of the FTI as you move up in the process of membership. So that said, really good points, Mark. Thanks for sharing them. And
just one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Clarify one thing. In regard to faith, I noticed somebody commented that they're an atheist. Well, and I use faith very generically. It's like, why do you roll out of bed in the morning? And I'm referring to communities of people that come and talk together. And I recognize, yes, they exist, but I feel like they're fairly eroded. But I appreciate your comments on that. Thank you.
Yeah, and Jan, Jan has a great point, is like for atheists, you can't really join a church most of the time if you're an atheist, although Unitarians actually accept atheists. So there are some churches that do, but the FTI doesn't care if you're an atheist or religious or evangelical to atheist, like everything in between, like Hasidic Jew, all cool. As long as the 5 intentions resonate with you, then you can be like a member of the FTI. It's more about having those common 5 intentions of being the best version of yourself, seeking truth, and being fair as the guiding principle in the 5 that I mentioned earlier in the conversation. So, I want the community to be very diverse, but have common values that are meaningful, that hold people together, and create a common sort of set of expectations amongst each other that we will help each other grow. Right? If we can help each other grow, I have a saying: if we don't help each other, who's going to help us? Right? And when you say it that way, it sounds so obvious. Like, yeah, if we don't help each other, who's going to help us? Sometimes we all need help. Every human being needs help sometimes. And if we don't have a circle of friends to help us when we need it, we feel a huge lacking. And so let's be there for other people and help each other. And when we do, we'll have people to help us when we need it. And so to your point about, and that actually brings me back to your point about endorsements, will they help you back? In my company's culture, one of our cultural values is help others. If they can help you and do, if they can help you back basically and do, then keep helping them. If you help those who can't help you, you're doing a good deed, and you should always ask for help when you're stuck. And so that's what I would say to you about, if you give someone an endorsement, will they help you back? You don't know, right? But if you actually liked what they did and you appreciate their professional capabilities, give them an endorsement. And then the ones that help you back, find other ways to help them more. And that creates a virtuous cycle. Whereas not giving them an endorsement, if you thought they were a good professional, cuts off that possibility of mutual benefit. Does that make sense, Mark?
It does make sense. And I mean, in terms of office, I always tend to endorse people who I think I go out of my way. I'm talking in social environments where
I see.
Fishing for somebody to, they'll say, oh, they were talking about all their travels and how they've done this and done that. And, they're really looking to be appreciated. Sometimes anyway, I'll leave it there. I appreciate you addressing it.
Sure, thanks. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Got, I need some help. I tried to log into my account. I forget my password, and there's no way to go into my account.
So that sometimes happens with Discord. Let me see. Ellis, can you try to help Oded with the lost password thing? Or let me put my email in.
Because you talk about help, so I need help.
Yeah, so Oded, email me, and either Ellis or I'll get back to you and try to get you through the Discord. Discord does have like sometimes you have to create a new account. Sometimes their lost password just doesn't work right. Like there's something that gets certain people stuck, and it's not user friendly. What can I say? It's a great tool, but it's not as user friendly as it should be, and the onboarding process is not as good as it should be. There's a flaw in their onboarding where people get stuck. So you might be in that situation. I've gotten people unstuck before, and we can do a Zoom where you share your screen, Oded, and I'll try to get you unstuck. Probably over the weekend, if that's okay. So I put my email in the chat, Oded. Just email me, and I'll give you some times over the weekend to see if those work for you. Farzan.
First, thank you for hosting this engaging discussion, Garrett, and for all the participants for their interesting questions and comments. I'll close with a question that's maybe more down to earth. I'm curious if you have any thoughts about the friend circles and organizing and maintaining friend circles in the context of also maintaining a life partner relationship. For example, are there any scientific studies saying, is it better to always include the life partner in all different outings and these sorts of things? I'm curious about how it all fits into the organization.
This comes back to what I said about as long as it's mutually agreeable, a-okay. I will say, like, earlier in life, I had partners that didn't want me to have lots of relationship outside of me and my partner, and that wasn't healthy for me. Like, I like having a lot of good relationships in my life, and so I would argue that there are extremes like that where people are trying to like limit you, and I would say as long as I personally think that it's healthy to have relationships outside of you and your partner, because if your partner doesn't like to play tennis, well, it's okay for you to have tennis buddies, right? And if your partner doesn't have some common interest with you, it's okay for you to have friends in that area of common interest. Now, ultimately, you want your relationships to be mutually consensual with your life partner. If this is someone that you're already married to, then you really need to make sure that they're comfortable with the types of relationships you have. But I would say that you need to also know what your boundaries are, and if like what you're looking for in life. And I think that it's healthy to have relationships outside of a significant other that are not necessarily related to a significant other. And one of the things I really appreciate about my wife is she lets me have friends outside of just me and her, only having, like, we have mutual friends, but we also have our own friends outside of us as a couple. And I like that because I have my friends, I have our friends, and I have two sets of two different types of friends, and that allows me to have friends that have common interests with me, and also be able to have friends that have common interests with my wife. And so, but I would argue that there's no one right or wrong answer about that. It really comes down to mutual consent, but it means mutual consent. It doesn't mean one person bullies the other and gets their way, right? It has to be mutually consensual, whatever relationships both of you have. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Thank you. That's helpful.
Sure. So I do want to thank everybody for coming. I really hope that everybody learned something tonight. That if people can write in the chat if you learned something, I would love to hear whether or not people learned something tonight. I think I mentioned briefly that I think everybody's purpose in life is to learn. So the goal of these sessions is that we learn from each other. So I hope people did learn. And if you learned something, please write a note that I learned something in the chat. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate people's comments, the questions, like the community. And I really want to encourage everyone to look at membership of the FGI. I think we can like create a really healthy community of people who get to know each other better. We have one pod going now that's going really well. And we want to create other pods of people that get to know each other really well and, become close friends and, create what's called accountability partners to help, work towards achieving life goals. And that's part of, I think I mentioned one of the lectures in the FTI curriculum is how to achieve your life's goals in a state of flow. And we have techniques for helping you achieve the goals that you have in life, whatever they are. As long as they're not causing unnecessary harm, we want people to help achieve their goals. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for your great comments and questions. And I hope everybody has a great night. Sorry, we ended, 20 minutes early. This is probably the latest we've gone. But I want to thank everyone again, and hope you all have a great night, and hope to see you all next week. We'll have another event next Tuesday, and hope to see you all in the online community in Discord. You can find that link on freethinkerinstitute.org, and Ellis posted the links as well. So thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank
you, Garrett.
Thanks.